Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel today. We've got some positive movement going through the courts with a few different lawsuits. So today we have Chuck Michel, who is the president of CRPA. He is also the founding partner of Michel & Associates. Chuck, thank you very much for being on with us today.
Always a pleasure.
Absolutely, it is. So I thought, Chuck, maybe we could start with Rhode and Duncan. This is obviously Duncan v. Bonta, the lawsuit on the magazine ban that California would like to impose, along with Rhode, our challenge to the ammunition regulations. A couple of lawsuits that really got lumped into a group of four, if I'm not mistaken, with Judge Benitez. We were specifically looking at arguments pertaining to the Bruin decision. So what exactly is going on there, and what does it look like going forward?
Four different cases were litigated in San Diego, United States District Court, and they all at different times, and they made their way up to the Ninth Circuit, and then were bottlenecked behind Duncan, which we won at the three-judge panel. That was a huge ruling. That was the magazine capacity limitation law. And then we lost in an en banc panel because there's a lot of Democratic appointed judges on the Ninth Circuit, and they go to a larger panel of judges, and you tend to get a few more. That math has changed a bit since then, but all the other cases were stayed behind Duncan. Duncan then went up to the United States Supreme Court and was held there until Bruin came down. And then when Bruin came down, Duncan was the en banc decision was vacated, and Duncan was remanded by the Supreme Court back down to the Ninth Circuit to be reconsidered. And essentially what happened is all the cases that were up there in the Ninth Circuit were remanded back down to Judge Benitez in the San Diego District Court to be reconsidered in light of Bruin. But they had all been held up there, and even though they were on different schedules originally, they all then got sent back down at the same time, and they were all ultimately coordinated in front of Judge Benitez. He's had several hearings where all the attorneys were in the room for the Miller case, which is an assault weapon challenge, and CRPA has a similar challenge, the Rupp case that's pending, but not in front of Judge Benitez. Then the Rhode case, which is the ammunition background check challenge, which we won in front of Judge Benitez. Then the Duncan case, the magazine challenge, which we won in front of Judge Benitez. So you have the magazine and the ammunition background check, Duncan and Rhode. Then you have a challenge to the Billy Club law under the Second Amendment, believe it or not. And it's actually a good challenge because no one knows what a Billy really is. If you have a baseball bat in your car and you're heading to the ballpark, is that a Billy or is that illegal? Or is that legal? And then if you have a long flashlight or if you have a cane, there's all these things that could be considered Billies and make you a criminal. So those cases are were all coordinated in front of Judge Benitez. He had several hearings, and the bottom line is all the briefs in those cases, the final briefs in those cases, were filed on Tuesday. So now he's been fully briefed, and he could rule at any time. I am inclined to think he's not going to be in a huge rush, and he's got a lot to consider. There was a lot of material that was filed. It's really kind of interesting to see the games that the state is trying to play now, because they don't have, Bruin requires a historical analog. In other words, an old law that's similar to the new law that would justify the new law and indicate that the founding fathers would tolerate the new law. Well, there's no such thing as that for a magazine capacity ban, or for an ammo background check, or for a semi-auto ban, or for that matter, a Billy Club ban. So the state could not find these historical analogs to justify their current laws. So what they tried to do, there's some language in the Bruin decision that talks about unusual societal developments or technological developments might require a more nuanced approach than just a simple historical analogy. And the state is now trying to claim that all of these things, Billies and magazine bans and semi-auto bans and ammo background checks, are all because of a new crime problem that the United States has never faced with these particular types of firearms before, and so they're entitled to ban these, even though there is no real historical analog. And they're getting very, very desperate because Bruin sets up such a strong test. And I think Judge Benitez is going to see through that fairly quickly, as some other courts are likely also to do. But I don't know if he will issue one opinion at a time over a period of weeks, or all at once, or what. But we'll see. I expect to see some very positive rulings coming out of Judge Benitez fairly soon.
So, and that's so one of my questions was going to be, there isn't just one blanket decision that Benitez gives for all of these lawsuits, especially because 2 of them are CRPA lawsuits, 2 of them are not. But he decided, if I'm understanding this correctly, he decided to lump them all together to specifically get arguments pertaining to the Bruin decision, history, text, and tradition. So we haven't
for all 4 cases. They are 4 separate cases. There will be 4 separate opinions coming out of the court.
So I'm just, did that change CRPA's argument very much within these cases? I feel like when you're arguing from a constitutional standpoint, and if you're arguing from a historical standpoint, did the lawsuits for CRPA really change, or was it really the states that ended up having to change with this new ruling?
Well, before we used to have to argue policy questions. Would banning these guns make us safer? And there was all kinds of junk science. The state does not want to give up on that. They want to argue that these laws are necessary for public safety. But that is not the appropriate test. They're trying to bootstrap that test in under this nuanced approach for a new societal and technological problem. But it doesn't work. These guns and these magazines and billies, for that matter, are in common use. And that should be the end of the inquiry. That's what Heller said. We don't just rely on Bruin. Heller was a big case too. And so the state wants to now try and relitigate and sneak in this interest balancing test, where they say that it's in the government's and the public's interest to ban these guns because it'll make us safer. They're trying to bootstrap a policy argument in there. But that was what the primary argument was in the original case before Bruin came down, was this public safety, public policy argument. And they didn't even win that, because they could not show that semi-automatic rifles, everybody talks about the AR-15, but the California quote unquote Assault Weapon Control Act goes way beyond ARs. There's all kinds of semi-autos. It's an entire class of semi-automatic rifles that are being banned, and they couldn't show that banning them would make us any safer in the original case under just the Heller test. So now, under the Bruin test, they have an even harder burden, an even higher standard they have to meet, and it's their burden of proof. So it made our case a little easier. The state had to try and prove that its infringement on the Second Amendment was justified, and they did not, in my view, they did not have much success in that.
So what's the outlook then? I mean, time and the way that we refer to time is a little bit relative. I know that you said, Judge Benitez wouldn't be in the biggest hurry to come out with these decisions. Any guesses or inklings, or is there anything that we can look at to kind of, create?
Well, I don't mean to say that he's not in a hurry. I mean, he will process these, expeditiously, but there's a lot of material that he's got to digest and put into his written opinions to discuss why what the state tried to do did not save their law, or for that matter, to tell us why, we don't win. I mean, I can't predict with 100% certainty what he's going to do, but I think we know based on his previous rulings and considering that the Bruin test makes it even harder for the state to succeed. But he's going to want to be thorough, because the state, at the end of this process, the briefing process, the state was just trying to pad the record up for appeal. They're going to appeal all 4 of these rulings, and they wanted to have as much material in there that they could point to in the Ninth Circuit as they could possibly sneak in. So he's going to be thoroughly addressing all of that, I expect. So I it could be 2 weeks, could be a month. I don't think it's going to be much longer than that. And I don't know if he will issue one opinion at a time or all four at once. I mean, but Gavin Newsom has been really, really critical of not just Judge Benitez, but any judge who issues a pro-Second Amendment ruling in the entire country. He has called them all ideologues, which is kind of funny. That's a bit of the pot calling the kettle black, in my view. But he's condemned these judges, and so I don't know if Judge Benitez will want to get all four of them into one news cycle or four different cases into a longer news cycle to just give Gavin Newsom more opportunity to say how much he hates the Second Amendment and he hates guns and gun owners and judges.
Yeah. To be fair to Gavin Newsom, he doesn't have too much more to boast off of when he's going to be making a bid for the president, other than the fact that California creates more oppressive gun laws than any other state. But going back to the challenging part, so you're assuming, and I would assume the same thing, that these are going to get challenged to the Ninth Circuit. If I'm not mistaken, Judge Benitez already signed something with Duncan saying that the ruling would be stayed if appealed. Is that correct or not?
No, that wouldn't apply to the ruling that's about to come out. That applied to when the Duncan case came back to Judge Benitez's court. An injunction was set to expire. That injunction allowed people to continue to possess grandfathered magazines that had been grandfathered when the law first passed in, I think it was 93. But then another law was passed that banned their possession entirely, whether you were grandfathered in or not. So what we have is the status quo. People can still continue to possess fathered magazines, but they can't buy new ones or import new ones or sell or buy any new ones. So all Judge Benitez did was make sure everybody understood that order was still in effect when the cases came back down to him. He's going to have to issue another order now, an injunction, we hope, that will say both the law against possessing and acquiring magazines and the law against, that grandfathered in him, all that's wiped out because now these magazines are legal to buy and sell. But we have to get that order from him, and then hopefully it does not get immediately stayed by the Ninth Circuit. We'll have to see what the Ninth Circuit does.
And that's what I was actually getting at. So you're saying there is potential here to see another Freedom Week, to see another period of time, even if it is a week, even if it's a day, but potentially to also, be free of the regulations on ammunition as well?
Yes, that's conceivably possible. And we will definitely let folks know if an injunction goes into effect that's not stayed. I don't think the DOJ is going to let that happen again, though. They didn't like Freedom Week. They didn't like the fact that 1 million new magazines came into the state in a 7-day period or thereabouts. And they will be ready. I expect they're already planning on what to do when and if they lose, and they'll probably have it. They probably have their Ninth Circuit appeals request and a request for the Ninth Circuit to stay any ruling from Judge Benitez in all 4 cases immediately, so there won't be any overlap.
Got it. Well, we'll continue to have our fingers crossed regardless. I can definitely see what you're saying, and it wouldn't be surprising if they were prepared. But okay, so that's pretty clear outlook on Duncan and Rhode. I also wanted to get an idea of what's going on with the handgun roster case. This is Boland v. Bonta.
Boland v. Bonta, right. Well, obviously the handgun roster, the quote unquote unsafe handgun roster, which is absolutely not an accurate description of what this roster does. It bans all kinds in fact, it bans the latest and greatest and safest firearms that there are on the market, because anytime you change anything, you have to get it reapproved. And now you can't get it reapproved unless you have a magazine disconnect safety and a loaded chamber indicator and microstamping. Even though microstamping has essentially been found to be impossible to do and also easy to defeat with a nail file, the no guns can be added to the roster. So we're down to like 200 basic models of guns, handguns, pistols that you can buy in the state of California, which, you know, that there's thousands of models available in the rest of the country, and they're all tailored for individual circumstances. You know, everybody wants different features, different size, different caliber, different sights, you know, different grips. They want different things to fit their individual circumstances, and most of that consumer choice is wiped out by the Unsafe Handgun Act, the roster law. And so we've challenged it. We're trying to knock out the roster, the microstamping requirement, as well as the loaded chamber indicator and the magazine disconnect safety, which has been restricting the market and keeping really some of the most, the latest technological advances in handguns, keeping them out of the California market. We had a hearing in that case, a 2-day hearing with expert testimony, and a final brief is due tomorrow, I believe. And then we'll have a decision coming down from that judge. In the meantime, other states are already looking at what California's been doing and trying to pass similar laws, like Illinois and Oregon, and you know, Bloomberg is not going to, and the many lawyers that he employs and that he makes available to state attorney generals and deputy attorney generals across the country to try and keep his laws, you know, in force. He's not going to roll over. He's not rolling over on any of this. They're really trying to overwhelm us with so many new laws that they don't think we can keep up in court. So that's exactly what we have to do. Just keep challenging them and keep knocking them out.
Well, you know, if California can be a major exporter in firearms legislation, maybe we can be a major exporter of firearms litigation, and maybe you can clue me and our viewers into how this works. We reside in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. If Oregon has passed a law stating that magazines that have the capacity to hold more than 10 rounds is illegal to own, and CRPA wins its Duncan case, would that apply to the state of Oregon also?
If it came out of the Ninth Circuit, yeah. Any court, any state in the Ninth Circuit would be bound by a Ninth Circuit ruling.
Well, we're going to keep pushing for that, definitely. Chuck, I want to thank you very much for coming on and giving us the updates on these ones. We definitely look forward to having you back, just like we're looking forward to some big victories in the litigation arena. Thanks again for being on with us.
My pleasure. Folks, just keep in mind we have lots of court fights going on beyond the ones we've just talked about, and we have many more planned. So please keep supporting CRPA so that we can keep filing lawsuits and knocking these laws out and reclaiming the freedoms that have been taken from us, really stolen from us for the last couple of decades by California politicians. This is really a time for a Second Amendment reckoning, and we're doing a lot of things to make that happen.
Well said. Well, yeah, thanks again, Chuck. I appreciate it. And if you like this content, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. We are still on the road to 10,000 subscribers, and we are almost there. We're getting closer every single day. With your support to CRPA and this channel, we are making a difference. We're making a difference in legislation, litigation, and with programs all throughout the state. So one more time, guys, please like, share, and subscribe to these videos. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll be with you on the next one.